Good afternoon. I'm Commissioner Jo Ann Hardesty, and I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with some amazing leaders in our community. But before we start, I want to acknowledge what's happening today in Portland. We are anticipating an invasion of white nationalists and white supremacists, also known as Proud Boys and a whole host of other names. Um, I am so proud to live in a city where the entire city has come together and said, hate will not be tolerated, violence will not be tolerated. And so, elected leaders, community leaders all across Oregon have sent a very strong message. I want to read an excerpt from a letter that was sent out yesterday by the Portland City Council and other elected leaders in the city and state. As the united leadership of the City of Portland and State of Oregon, we publicly oppose the far-right gathering scheduled to take place in North Portland this Saturday. The event poses a physical danger to Portland residents, as clearly shown by organizers' long track records of assaults, confrontations, and threats against elected officials and the citizenry of Portland. This summer, Proud Boys associates fired shots and brandished guns at protesters, beat people in broad daylight, and attacked passerbys. The violent nature of the Proud Boys rhetoric and the buildup to September 26 and recent reporting, which indicate that allied groups are developing detailed plans to target press and legal observers at upcoming events, provide additional cause for concern. For the past 3 years, our communities have repeatedly had to deal with rallies of this kind, in which participants travel to our city threatening takeovers, touting their combat unit capacity, and openly bragging about the waste of city resources that they can provoke by showing up to bring violence to our downtown core and our neighborhood. Oregon law prohibits paramilitary activity. Organizers of and likely participants in the September 26 event have openly discussed tactical operations and military style formations that lead us to believe that they are operating as an unauthorized private military. Many of them are crossing state lines in an attempt to cause chaos and disrupt the peace. One regular at far right rallies wrote this week on social media, we have a unit large enough now that we have specialized teams inside our unit, combat and support. And another wrote, like we do in other states, tactical ambushes at night while backing up the police are key. I want to be clear. This will not be tolerated. We will use every law we have to ensure that these white supremacists, if they show up and peacefully protest, they will be fined. But if they break any laws, including inciting violence and racial hatred, they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I hate that we still have to say this over and over and over again in a country that promises to be representative of us all. And I can't think of a better reason for this conversation today. So I'm going to introduce the panelists and then we're going to jump in. First, let me say again, thank you all for being here. And okay, let's jump in. I want to introduce first Candace Avalos, she, her pronouns, and she is a first generation American Blacktina, daughter of Guatemalan immigrants and Black Virginians from the Jim Crow South. She works at PSU advising student government and Greek life. A former candidate for Portland City Council, she serves as chair of the Citizen Review Committee and works to bring transparency and accountability to Portland Police. She shows up for the community in a variety of ways, including as a board member for Portland Neighbors Welcome and a communication coordinator for a local Oregon kickball club. Welcome, Candace.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Uh, Our pleasure. Want to say hi to our audience?
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to this conversation and I'm really proud to be among this great group of people. So thanks.
Next, Cameron Witten, all pronouns, is a community activist, small business owner, and nonprofit executive. At the age of 18, Cameron worked themselves out of youth homelessness in Portland and has spent the past decade giving back to the very same community that was here when they needed it most. They have a bachelor's of economics from Portland State University and are an MBA student at Willamette University. Cameron recently served as the executive director of the Q Center and are the founder and CEO of racial justice nonprofit Brown Hope. They serve on the board of Reach CDC and Pioneer Courthouse Square. Cameron.
Commissioner Hardesty, thank you so much for allowing me to be here and to be in this room of beautiful, beautiful Black millennials that I get to spend a lot of time with. And so it has been a hard week, but I've seen a lot of joy in the last couple of months because of the folks that viewers on Facebook are going to meet today. What I would just briefly say is that
Cameron, we're going to come back to you. We take all that time for your intro. We'll never get to the questions. Love you. We'll be back. Next, let me introduce Lamar Wise. Lamar Wise went to the University of Oregon and started working for the Oregon Student Association in 2015, eventually becoming the executive director. Last year, he started working for ASME Council 75 as a political coordinator. Since then, Lamar has been appointed to various boards, including the ACLU of Oregon, Community Alliance of Tenants, and OWL Oregon. Lamar also co-founded Washington County Ignite and has had a part of the Black protest response team for Reimagine Oregon. Welcome, Lamar.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And hello, everyone that's listening. I agree with Cameron. It's been a tough week, but I'm happy to be here. And thanks for just making space for us to have this conversation.
Next, Sophie. And Sophie, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to help me with your last name again to see if I get it right. Sophie Mazigua.
Sophie Mazaraga.
Mazaraga.
Thanks for giving it your best shot, Hardesty.
I did. I was going to just say it for me, save me my embarrassment. But by the end of this show, I will have it down. Thank you so much. Sophie is a first-generation Ugandan American employed as a Rose City resource manager at Street Roots, and serves as a member of the Portland Police Equity Advisory Council. She is passionate about advocating for mental health, women's rights, and social economic justice. Sophie.
I just want to express gratitude for you holding a space here and acknowledging members of the community that are putting in that legwork and wanting to impact the community for the better. So again, just expressing gratitude.
Next, we have Devin Boss. Devin Boss was born and raised in Northeast Portland and is attending school with a major in videography. As a Black man, he has always been driven by a hunger to understand his identity in America and a desire to break down damaging stereotypes placed on an already deeply stigmatized people. He, like many others, was compelled into the protest-filled streets of downtown Portland by the murder of George Floyd and the events that unfolded soon after worldwide. His goal is to utilize his inherent abilities, cultivated skill set, and life experiences to improve the quality of every Black life locally and abroad, and to shift the culture of thought surrounding race entirely. Devin, welcome.
Thanks a lot for having me. Honestly, it's just a blessing to be here with all of you guys. Very humbling to be around so many powerful, intellectual Black minds. Thank you guys for having me, and I'm excited to be a part of this conversation.
Devin, tell the viewers where you are.
I'm currently at another protest. Right now, we are at Vanport, historic Vanport, standing in solidarity for all those who have been lost and whose names have not seen justice. There are Proud Boys in the city who have created their own protests and are trying to incite violence. Our group is completely on the same page that we need to maintain a nonviolent, peaceful resistance, and that's what we're going to do.
Here, here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our last participant, but certainly not least, is Shanice Brittany Clark. She is a product of a Jamaican working class family and a local Portland activist for racial, climate, and educational justice. Shanice is a co-founder of the Black Millennium Movement and a grant-making member of the Portland Clean Energy Fund Committee. After being pushed out of public school, she dedicated her life to addressing systems that reinforce student safety and support in education. From GED to master's degree, Shanice currently serves as Portland Public Schools as Director of Community Engagement. Welcome, Shanice.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for inviting me to participate in this wonderful panel with this great group of Black folks. And I'm looking forward to this conversation and feel similarly, it's a difficult week and day. So processing all of these issues with y'all is something I'm going to be grateful for.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's jump in. And so let's start with Lamar. Lamar, let me ask you this question. What motivated you to get involved in advocacy work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've been involved for a long time, even just like dating back since elementary school. I've always wanted to just like get involved in general, but I think actually a huge turning point for me in my life was in college when my bank account was in the negative and I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have enough money for rent. And also there's just like a lot happening to me. Like I was starting to realize my identity and in relation to like politics in a real way in college. And that's actually when I helped to lead my first like die-in. And so a lot happened, I think, in college that helped to want to get me involved. I realized that everyone should have enough food to eat. Everyone should have a place over that they could stay, and feel safe. And I also realized that there are so many issues structurally that we need to tend to that contribute to racism, like both in our institutions, but like culturally, just like day to day. So I wanted to be a part of the effort to make a better world. And actually, I was able to meet a lot of these folks through that effort. So I'm happy to be here with you all. But yeah, that's kind of like what triggered it for me.
Thank you. Shanice, how about you? Where did you find your advocacy wings?
It really would go back to the beginning. I think my mother, while probably wouldn't self-identify as an organizer, but her active participation in her union, in her healthcare union, really made an impact on me. But I think I truly became politicized with other Black women and femmes in my predominantly white college who were all just collectively numb from the racism we were experiencing on campus. And the increased just access to videos and stories of Black kids and people dying. And I think really as a survivor, these intellectual relationships with other Black women really helped me understand that gender violence and race-based violence have a relationship with each other. And a lot of what I experienced was due to the structural racism that really shows up differently for Black women. And so when the Black Lives Matter movement was at a starting place, I think I was finishing up college, and at that time, other Black students were really doing a lot of direct action in response to all of the terrible stuff that went down on campus. So I think that really started my journey in my self-work to further make meaning of my identity and how racism and all of its forms really impacted my life.
Nice. Cameron, you want to jump in? When did you first decide you wanted to be involved in advocacy work?
I've got an hour for this question, right?
No, I will cut you off. So use your 2 minutes wisely.
So honestly, I had no choice. As a child, I was a victim of physical and emotional abuse by my father. And by the time I turned 18, I had no hope for my future. And so I left. I got the hell out of Virginia and I wound up in Oregon. And the first night that I ended up in Oregon, I was trying to stay at a friend's dad's house and I was turned away because he didn't want a Black man in his home. And then I ended up homeless in Portland. And that was a time where I was a young, poor, homeless Black person living in the United States. Such a dangerous time. And I knew how much work it would take to get myself out of homelessness. And I saw all the peers around me who were too young to have made any mistakes in their lives. And yet here they were struggling for survival. And so from an early age, I was woken from the illusion that this American dream was available for all. But I don't believe being an activist requires you to understand suffering. You do not need to experience suffering in life to have a moral consciousness. And so during this time of being an activist, learning that this is work that we are all called to do.
Hear, hear. Well done, Cameron. Sophie, you want to answer this one?
Yes. So for me, it initially began like similarly to others in the household. I experienced traumas while living in Portland, and in particular with mental health, seeing that I have several family members who have mental health issues, and to see the criminalization of their mental health issues when we were at a time where we were needing treatment, support for my family members, to witness police brutality at my doorstep. As a youth, I wanted to understand why this was happening and who this was happening to. I was unsure. So it led me down a path of research, and research led me down a path of connecting with others. And on a daily basis, I would think about challenges and hardships that I would face, and wondering if others were facing them similarly. Ultimately led me down the route of wanting to be a part of a group of people who could kind of act as a think tank and just impact our life for the greater good. So I think advocacy is a gateway to seeing if these ideas that we have that can serve as solutions are actual solutions or not. So
yeah. Thank you. Devin.
Yeah, I think for me personally, what kind of started me down this path is just being a Black man born and raised in Northeast Portland and experiencing, a series of traumas from police brutality, to the various institutions that treated me like I was different than someone else. In particular, this movement, there was a movement right outside of my door, and it was very hard to ignore. I've always been a very passionate person and always felt like I had a role to play in this world, but I just didn't exactly know what it meant. And this was an opportunity that kind of thrust that kind of narrative onto me and gave me the ability and the space to kind of enact and speak out the change that I want to see in the world. And with that, we kind of created Rose City Justice, and everything has kind of just been moving from there. It's just, this has been a monumentous movement that kind of told me exactly how I was going to be able to help the people that I wanted to help. And moving forward, that's all I want to do is continue to amplify voices.
Well, you do know this is the biggest movement ever to hit the world, right?
It is a very big movement. It's very, very passionate and very powerful, and we want to keep that momentum going.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to move right into the next question because all of you alluded to it in one way or another. When you see a Portland police presence in your daily life, does it make you feel safe? Lamar, you seem to have a reaction, so I'm going to go to you first.
I mean,
Oh, Lamar, I'm sorry. It looks like I left my wonderful friend Candace out of answering this question. Would you hold that for a second?
Yes, let's hear from
Candace, you know I love you dearly. I am so sorry, Candace. And
That's okay.
how could I forget you? Okay, Candace, tell us.
No worries.
When did you get involved in advocacy work?
Yeah, so for me, it started at a really young age. And I think a lot of it came out of growing up in an immigrant family. My mom was brought to this country from Guatemala in the 1970s. And as a first generation American, I always felt a lot of pressure to do something good and meaningful with my life because my family sacrificed so much for us. And so as I got older and started to pay more attention to the world and started to realize how it was interacting with me, and as I was exploring my identity as a Black and Latina woman, a new school was opening up, and there was a lot of tension in the neighborhood around, like, I don't want my kids to go to this school that's going to have brown kids at it. And, you know, looking back, I think about how messed up that was, but I didn't understand it at 13. And so I just saw that there was a lot of pain and I wanted to do something about it. So I got involved in student government, and that's really where I found my advocacy and my voice. It led to many years of running for office and doing lots of firsts in my time. And I'm an educator at heart. So I just really feel like, you know, their leadership needs to be nurtured, and we all have so much potential that can be unlocked with the right mentors and resources and networks. So that kind of led me down this path of continuing that work at PSU. And I feel like, you know, when we're not always empowered as Black women, so we have to empower each other. And that's kind of what has led me down this path of advocacy.
Well, and what all of you have said in one way or another is how your lived experience from an early age really kind of grounded you in this work. Even if your parents didn't have the word activist or organizer but they were committed, with one exception. But it's interesting to see that link. Because I think all of us are trying to figure out really how do you activate people to just like take to the street, right? And just demand change, right? How do you do that, especially in this age? So my apologies again, Candace. I'm going to the next question. When you see a police officer presence in your daily life, does it make you feel safe? And I went to Lamar because he had a look on his face that made me think he had an answer to this.
I mean, the first thought that came to mind is like, oh, it's very triggering, right? Like, I think it's hard for me to feel safe, especially just because of my own personal experiences, and then of course like what I see just like daily, it's just like in our faces. I feel like, but just like personally speaking, I like have always just had like really like weird experiences, right? Like one of the first times I actually got pulled over, it was for speeding. I was speeding, but I'll admit to that, I was speeding. Also, they called 3 police cars to give me a speeding ticket.
Oh,
I don't understand what the issue is. Like, I don't understand why there is so much fear around me just being alive. And I think I'm reminded of that every day through social media, through the interactions that I've had protesting, and through the advocacy that we've all been doing collectively, is that like I'm constantly reminded how much work we still have left to do to show folks that like there are a variety of different ways for us to build a community in which we can all feel safe in. And I think we have a lot of work to do to change hearts and minds, to get folks to realize that there are other options out there that we should explore, and that we should explore that together. But yeah, like I'm super interested to hear what like other folks think about this too, because I just immediately get triggered.
Sophie, how do you feel about this?
So for me, when I encounter law enforcement, the first feeling that I have that comes through my body is hesitancy. I feel very hesitant because for me personally, I grew up learning that if you play respectability politics, if you look a certain way, you dress a certain way, you speak a certain way, that no harm can come to you through people in power. And when harm did come in my direction from law enforcement, I didn't feel like from that point then on, I would rather essentially avoid interactions with law enforcement in general, just minimize interactions, just because there are uncertain outcomes. And there's only so much that I'm in control of. And I don't know if law enforcement are holding implicit bias or explicit bias. But beyond that point, I believe with us being in a system that does not protect the rights of people who look like me and BIPOC people, Black people in particular, it's just in my best interest to avoid it, because I don't know if the encounter is going to be of one where I'm being looked at as an individual and being spoken to as an individual, or if I'm being boxed into a category, a negative, demonizing stereotype.
Thank you. Cameron.
I have two immediate reactions that come to me when I see police in my neighborhood. One, do not engage. However you can get through, get past, survive, do not engage. Second is if you are engaged, and the very first thing that I remind myself, like mechanical, make sure they know who you are. And I do that because what I've seen happen far too often than not is that the police officer will see you and strip you of your humanity, and you will become a statistic. And here we are living in a society which normalizes whiteness as superior and safe. And so being in this beautiful Black body, too often I am seen as a fire-eyed demon, as a 20-foot tall hulking monster. I must be up to no good. And that's why I have found that I need to protect myself by using my identity, using the fact that you can Google my name to protect myself. And I have had run-ins with the police here in Portland. There was a and it's not just police, it is many other people who hold police-like powers. In 2015, I was arrested on Portland streetcar by an operator just because I tried to complain to him about a leak and burning smell in the streetcar, and he called 911 on me and told everyone in the streetcar that I was a threat to everybody's safety. Wow. And so, sadly, as somebody who contributes to this community and really cares about the city that I live in, it is so sad to see that just by existing and being who I am, people will strip me of that humanity and will find ways to cause suffering and potentially kill me.
Thank you, Cameron. Candace.
You know, it's hard not to be afraid or triggered when we're constantly consuming Black bodies getting harmed and killed on the internet. I think that's something that, we're all doom scrolling in general, but for us, when we scroll by and it's yet another case of somebody getting harmed by the police, it's personal for us. So it's, even though I personally haven't had any like really negative, traumatizing experiences with an officer, I've definitely been pulled over a couple of times. It's something that I'm always, hesitancy is a really good way of putting it, how Sophie said. And I know, like, for example, I drive a car that's, it's a 1999 Corolla, and it's something that's always on my mind because I feel like it makes me stick out. The paint's kind of rubbing off. It's like, and it's something that, if my lights are out, or if like I need to get that quickly fixed, because I was pulled over once because one of my taillights was out, and it was like 1 a.m. I was coming home from something. And I just remember being so afraid. And, the interaction was fine, but like that buildup and that tension is always going to be there for us. So I feel like it's just, important for people to understand that we have this inherent fear, and it's not unjustified. So our interactions, we try to stay away, and it's really harmful to the psyche as we move through the city.
I will say I still have that fear. If I'm pulled over, your body just tenses up no matter what you try to do. Devin.
People from my walk of life have never really had or seldomly have positive experiences with the police. Myself, from an early age, from like 6th grade, I recall being manhandled by 2 police officers over an incident at a QFC where one of my friends stole a candy bar. Something where a white kid would probably get a slap on the wrist or completely get a different form of punishment. I was called nigger. I was called a poor black boy from the ghetto. And like, what does that do for you growing up? What does that do to your psyche when the people that have been in charge of protecting you, these authoritative figures, treat you in this way? It's very odd. You're very taken aback, and you don't know what to do with that information. I've never called the police before. Like a lot of people that I know have never called the police because they don't feel like help to us. When a routine, quote unquote, routine traffic stop, and my heart stops. You get that feeling like you're about to fall out of a chair, because that routine traffic stop could seriously alter your entire life. I'm a 100% legit person, and I shouldn't even have to say that. But in your head, you're saying that I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I can handle this. Like, and like Cameron was saying, it's like, or somebody was saying about individualism, but it's like individualism is a privilege that's only allotted to white people. Like, we are immediately turned into objects. Even out here in this protest where I'm at right now, a lot of us have been out here, and you witness the police don't even want to come to the middle ground with us. They look at it as us versus them. And that's extremely problematic. So I've never felt like anybody was on my side. I always felt like I was an outsider, and a guest who had to watch how he behaved, because this isn't really my house. And so it's just like, you don't feel safe when they're around. You don't feel like they're going to have your back when they're called, because I've had friends call the police, and the police start investigating them as opposed to the reason why they were called. And so these types of things that are built into the system have to change. These types of implicit associations with Black people have to change. I mean, we ourselves hate ourselves and are afraid of ourselves because of the way the media and everything has portrayed us. So we have to really attack this at the root of the problem. Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Devin. I'm going to have to move on because we got a lot we want to cover in the time we are together. But thank you. I feel your passion around just those examples. Shanice, your response to this question: do you feel safe when you are in the presence of Portland police officers?
I feel Sophie said it so well. I feel like I'm not trying to engage, and there's an element of respectability politics that just feels inherent if I have to. And I'm really reflecting on my dad. He's just frightened of police for good reason, because he was regularly pulled over. And I feel like this response has been built in my DNA. But I think here in Portland, just commuting or getting groceries or spending time with friends, there's been interactions with the police that have been harmful. And so just trying to live life I definitely don't feel safe around police. It definitely feel a sense of fear and at times dehumanizing experiences. And so I definitely think I'm not trying to engage with police for sure. And coming into my living space and commuting, I also don't drive, so transit police has also been a whole other thing that has had negative experiences for people around me and to me. So yeah, the impulse response of fear.
It's really sad when you think my dad's generation carried that same fear. My generation carries that same fear, and here you are, the millenniums, and you're carrying that same fear. It's kind of a moment to
It's kind of for survival.
yes,
If you can.
Yeah,
if you're at the
can.
right place at the right time, you can
Yes.
try to survive.
Very good point. So I'm going to start with Cameron. Cameron, have you attended any protests in the last 100 plus days? And if so, what has your experience on the ground been like?
I have. I attended the first protest following George Floyd's murder in Peninsula Park, a place where the Black community has always gathered every time there's been murder and violence and injustice against our community. And at that moment, it did not feel like a different protest because I had been to too many protests in Peninsula Park. Definitely at that moment did not predict here we would be 100 plus days later and seeing almost 99% of that time us showing up every day. But what I'll say, other than the fact that, people have heard me before talk about Occupy and how much protest changed my life, but it does make me think about, as Jo Ann said, the generational trauma. This morning, I watched a talk from Dr. Bernice King. And so before we had 6-year-old Gianna Floyd talk about how her daddy died and he changed the world, we had 5-year-old Bernice King, whose father was murdered by a society guilty of racism. So there is definitely a part of me that feels joy, but it is so tragic to think about all of the young Black daughters whose fathers continue to sacrifice their lives so that we are having these conversations. I am so tired of having to use broken bodies and futures as political capital to finally get these systems to change. We've got to do so much better. What we've seen in 2020 is that our ability to make change has nothing to do with anything but our ability to change, being willing to change. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. That's all I got to say.
Hear, hear. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go to Shanice. Shanice, have you been to the protest anytime in the last 100 plus days? And what was your experience?
Yes, I've gone off and on since the onset of when George Floyd was killed. And it's almost depressing, the idea that caring and acting in support of Black lives requires hundreds of dollars worth of equipment to protect myself and really accepting the risk of arrest that would ruin my future. I think that the police brutality on display is almost like the wartime they might talk about from another era. And there is a deep sense of fear that something terrible will continue to go down. And specifically when cops are, bull rushing protesters every night, I'm reminded when I'm not really in shape, when I'm trying to run to safety. And so I think that there's a real blind eye to this intense, systemic, and deadly brutality that is on display every night at the center of this movement. But I'm collectively in love with the people who haven't given up on the idea that Black people deserve better And I think that there is an autonomous level of organizing that I have never seen, that I want to be every bit a part of.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Devin, I'm going to go to you to answer to this question. I already know the answer is yes.
You will have time. It is a resounding yes. This has been one of the most important moments in my life. In general, I have always been waiting for an opportunity to really take a stance and do something for myself and my people, as opposed to being just a part of a system that just pushed me forward and marching to the beat of a drum. As soon as this started happening, the first 40 days, 40 plus days of thousands of people marching in solidarity on the same message, just that immediate primal feeling in your heart where we all were on the same page. We didn't even need to talk. Those moments were magical. And then the things that were happening between, at the JC, federal occupation, when you felt like there was another stance that we had to take. And one thing that I've noticed acutely in this movement is a sense of community, a sense of togetherness. I've never felt the community take care of me in the way that it did. I was stressed out, tired, I wasn't eating. I had lost about 30 pounds over the course of 6 weeks. And people really started coming and taking care of me and showing me love, and giving back to me as much as I was giving to them. And this sense of community and togetherness is everything to me. It's everything to all of us. It really makes you feel like you're a little more understood, because a lot of times people like myself walk through this city and I feel like a ghost. I feel like I don't matter. I feel like I'm not seen. And in this moment, I feel seen, I feel heard, and I feel important. And that's what I think a lot of people want to give. I want to give that feeling to everybody who has ever felt unheard or misunderstood. And so this movement has been so monumental in my life and others that are near to me.
So Devin, stop. You're not supposed to make the moderator cry. That's not part of the program. But thank you for that very eloquent statement.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, there's nothing to say to that. Thank you. Would you mute yourself, please, Devin? I'm loving
Yes, ma'am.
your voice, but we're being tuned out just a bit. Thank you so much. Wow, he really did make me cry. So Candace, you want to respond next?
Yeah, so I've been out there a few times on and off, and I think that it's been a mix of feelings. I feel intense sense of hope for how the community has continued to show up to support Black lives. There have been moments, I know I was walking towards a protest one day at the JC, and the car caravan was going on and people were driving around and honking and they had signs, and I cried. I mean, I was so overwhelmed with like that feeling of like people were here, they understand and they're finally stepping up. And then I think I also have this feeling of dread as I see police escalate and test the boundaries of an institution that's been emboldened by an authoritarian president. And I worry for my people, and I worry for what is going to come in November, what's going to happen. No matter the outcome of November, it's going to be chaotic. And, so often we suffer the most out of all of this. Even when we're standing in solidarity with white people who want to, speak up for Black lives, we still suffer the consequences more. So it makes me worried, but I feel, I've experienced the tear gas, which is miserable, and it makes me angry that even when I was like out of range, and that tear gas, it covers a whole area, and it makes me so angry that people that aren't even involved have to feel the effects of police indiscriminate use of a chemical gas during a respiratory virus. Like, come on, it's just so egregious to me, and it makes me hurt, but it also, I've felt a lot of hope, and I agree that this has empowered me. I agree with Devin. It's given me a moment to rise up and feel like I can finally speak out for what I believe. So.
Excellent. Cameron.
You want more?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I already? No.
I thought I spoke too much, Jo Ann.
Okay. What I meant to say was Lamar. That's what I meant.
We do look alike. That, especially up here, right? We have that in common.
Yes.
I'm just messing. I'm just messing. Yes, I have. I've had a various, I think, amount of thoughts and reactions to it. One of my first reactions was like, what a time for Black power building, right? Like, this is a moment in which, especially like young Black people have been coming out and actually been on the front lines, organizing their own things. And I gotta say, like, I feel like that's been the most amazing thing of this all. Like, the emergence of the Rosebuds, I actually coming out of like Rose City Justice, like, there are some awesome like youth that are doing some cool creative organizing work and getting folks involved in different ways, and we need more of that. um, Another thing that I saw is that, like, or felt, is that I didn't want this movement to be co-opted by white people anymore. Right, like, I think the first night I went out, it was awful. It was bad. Like I just felt like the movement for Black Lives were being led by white people, and one of the reasons why I got involved actually with Devin, and one of the first times like we kind of like took over the protest from white people, like that was the moment I was just like, this is what we should be doing, right? Like, giving space for Black people by Black people and having it be Black centered. Like, I think that was the shift that we all felt in June. And I think that was what helped to propel this to be like a long-term discussion as well, right?
Yeah.
Because like, once we get involved, like, we're not gonna half-ass it, right? Like, we're gonna be creative, we're gonna come together in different ways, and we're not gonna stop. Like, we said this from the beginning, that we are here and that we're gonna continue until we win, and we will win, right? It's only a matter of time. And so that those have been my emotions and thoughts as I've been out protesting, and that tear gas sucks. I 100% agree with Candace. Like, that is not fun at all. And I think the third night that I went out, a middle schooler got hit in the head with a tear gas canister. They're peaceful protesting, like the people that are out here, like the youth that are leading this, they didn't want any of this. Like, they're just trying to protest their existence, right? So I don't know. My heart hurts, but also I do have hope because of what I've seen in the past 100 days.
Thank you. And let me just say, you got this elder off the couch, because I had to fight with my staff to come down. But after I saw the kind of organizing you guys was doing, I knew I had to come down and be a part of that. So we can get the elders up and out. You're doing a good job of organizing. Sophie, please weigh in.
Yeah, I guess I want to just start by piggybacking off of what Lamar was mentioning with saying it was awful, it was bad, that essentially the protests were just being led by white people primarily starting out. And when I started, I went to the protests. Initially, it was actually by mistake. If I'm going to be honest, I was in the downtown Portland area when there was a march on the bridge, and being there, I said, for me, I'm the type to prioritize my physical well-being and my emotional well-being, and if I think something is going to be too emotionally too much emotional labor is going to be involved, I will be the first to avoid it. And I witnessed the protests, and then I went out in the day and in the evening, and I had been struck by a rubber bullet in my lower abdomen by Portland police, and I watched my white counterparts not have the same experience. And then I wrote a commentary piece on at the organization I'm with, Street Roots, and I thought about another Black woman who was struck, except for her, she was struck in the eye, and it was essentially, she's blind in one eye. And I thought about what that night could have been to me. It could have been more than just a rubber bullet in the abdomen, which leads to physical trauma. It could have been long-term pain and suffering. Right. And then I told myself that I can do the legwork and support people who are protesting from afar. But then I went over to Seattle and went into CHOP. I stayed over at CHOP for about 2 weeks with former intern Christina Laverty over at Street Roots. Mm-hmm. And basically I just helped to support the live-in protests and over at Capitol Hill. And for me, that was just a really powerful movement. And to see so many Black leaders, Black people become leaders and take roles that initially weren't being offered to them at organizations, didn't fit where they were, and just see them strategically plan and to be a part of that was so powerful. To be a part of the Black Collective and Black Leadership Council at CHOP. It was so powerful because we have the media's display of what CHOP is, and then I got the insight as to what the protest and CHOP is. So for me, it just is so powerful. Hold on. Are you hearing an audio?
Other news now, three
yes,
shootings.
Okay, sorry, that was.
It's gone.
Okay, so yeah, that was just so powerful for me. And yeah, I just want to conclude on that note.
Oh my gosh. Yes. For folks who may not know what CHOP is, would you explain what that community was?
Yeah, so CHOP was a community that essentially set themselves up at the Seattle precinct to protest and to hold that area as a space. It's essentially like a, for lack of better wording, a space that could be used as a bargaining chip, a bargaining tool. And yeah, there were occupiers. So it kind of reminded me of the Occupy movement in the past.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Did I leave anybody out of this question? No, everybody's good. Okay. And so let me ask this question. From the local Black Lives Matters movement, we hear demands that range from total abolition of the police to calls to decrease their scope of police work to provide real police accountability. What do you advocate for, and what are some ideas that we could implement to move us in that direction? Anybody chomping at the bits to go first? Okay, Candace, take it away.
Yeah, so I have been a very vocal supporter of the measure that Commissioner Hardesty's office put together. And so that's a big part of my work lately. Obviously, I currently work within the systems of police accountability. So I have a lot to say about how they work and what they need to be better. And, you know, they have basically been merely theater designed to give the illusion of accountability, and they don't have real authority to improve the lives of, you know, Black and brown people. And our communities haven't received justice. There have been 40 people killed since Kendra James in 2003. And of the 65 officers that pulled the trigger, none of them were disciplined. That's egregious. You know, that is not justice. And so I really think that that is an important first step. I think it's obviously not the only step, but for me, accountability, creating systems of accountability, no matter what other steps we take to, you know, put money into different services and invest more in our communities and in those safety net structures that we need. No matter what, there needs to be some kind of oversight with accountability, with authority, because until then, people are just going to continue to get away with harming us. So that is something I believe strongly in. And I think that it's going to take a lot of time for us to rebuild those systems that we have over decades disinvested from, our schools and mental health and housing and jobs. And I want to see us start to chip away at the institution of policing that has been used as a replacement to deal with those problems and as a symptom of the failure of our government to protect us with the things that we pay for. So that's kind of what I want to see. Accountability is a big part of where I want us to move.
Thank you very much. Lamar.
Yeah. It's real hard for me to support a system that has consistently over-policed Black and brown bodies. I think the way in which police function needs to be completely eradicated, right? Like, we're talking about an institution that was built to protect property and to ensure that slaves stayed with their masters, right? And mixing that all in with Oregon, which is made to be a white utopia in its inception, it's real hard for me to support the police institution as it stands. With that being said, myself and others have been a part of this Reimagine Safety effort and fund to ensure that Black folks had the time and space to be able to rethink how safety works and how law enforcement works, and to really begin to put together a different structure, right? Even in the conversations around abolition, we can't just abolish something without having something in place that works for the greater community, and especially makes sure that the folks who have been at the center of the brutality and the pain also feel safe, right? That's the goal, is to make sure that the folks that have been impacted by this issue continue to be at the center of where we find our solutions. And so that's where I feel like I've grown into, and I think I'm still growing. I get this question a lot, and I want to continue to be pushed to figure out a new way to deliver safety to all of us.
Thank you so much. Sophie?
Okay, I was wanting to jump on that.
I saw that.
Yeah, so for me, I would like to call for the allocation of more funding for organizations such as Portland Street Response, which is quite near and dear to my heart. But then also, I find that I see the value in it in the community, and I believe the reallocation it's very important. In case you guys are not aware, anyone's not aware, Portland Street Response is a locally funded program intended to decrease police interactions by sending a medic and crisis worker that will respond to particular 911 calls. It ensures that vulnerable communities can receive the support that they need and resources that they need instead of potential criminalization, which often happens with people who are experiencing mental illness, substance abuse issues, and Portland Street Response is just something that's very important to me, and seeing that pilot pass and seeing your efforts in that, Jo Ann, or just sorry, it brings this fire from within me, and it makes me feel like this is beyond being out on the streets. Having a role in this is something that I see as the change, and there's just different ways to show up in this movement, and supporting Portland Street Response supporting Cahoots. Shout out to Cahoots. Cahoots has worked on essentially similar to what Portland Street Response intends to do with the help of Portland Fire and Rescue. And it has just been monumental. And I hope that once Portland Street Response does hit the streets, it extends beyond the Lentz location, and it goes out into other communities such as like Washington County, Clackamas County, where mental health issues and challenges still plague the community, and police don't necessarily need to be the first responders to that.
Sophie, let me just say thank you for your fire around Portland Street Response. I have that same fire, and don't you worry, it is on its way. And I think the people will be thrilled when they see what we do with a non-armed response to our community members in need. So thank you for that. Let's see, who is next? Cameron, did you weigh in on this question?
No, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
I've been a Black Lives Matter activist since Black Lives Matter was even a term. And in those 7 years since, we have seen this country spiral into moral bankruptcy. For me, the most important thing we need to do is for this conversation on transformation, because our systems are broken. We need real transformation. And that conversation needs to be led by those most impacted. And so how we move forward has to be determined by Black people coming together and showing our vision. And being Black is not a monolith. And so I ride with our abolitionists because I know their hearts and their minds are around keeping our communities safer. And I ride with Commissioner Hardesty when she says, hand me the reins of the Portland Police Bureau. I hope you're listening, Ted Wheeler, because I know Commissioner Hardesty's mind and heart is to keep our communities safer. And so Portland, let us finally hand over the reins. Let us dismantle white supremacy and allow Black folks to convene, to have conversations where we're going to debate, where we're going to negotiate, but ultimately we're going to come forward with a bold vision for transformation that's going to keep our entire community safer. So vote Black, work Black.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Shanice, do you want to weigh in on this? Have you spoken on this one already? Not yet.
No, I haven't. I'll hop in. I'm resonating with what was shared. I know the police system as it is designed targets Black and brown folks at alarming different rates. And it's hard to believe the inherent structures can be abolished without communities who are over policed, Black and brown people having the autonomy to really define what safety means for them and having real control over the decision making in that process. And so without a just transition, going 0 to 60, without over policed communities truly being able to have that space and agency is difficult for me. But I do see this police accountability measure as something I support. I know at the same time this work is going to be difficult, and the inherent structures of policing are not set up to serve me and serve my community. But I get at the same time at my day job supporting and serving students and families. I'm thrilled at the opportunity of reimagining in community with them what sense of belonging and safety looks like free of police. And so that is a goal I'm seeing, and I see the control really needing to be in the hands of Black and brown people.
And let me ask you a question before I pass it on. And so it sounds like you believe that we ultimately abolition is the thing. And I've been wanting to ask this question for a while, right? So you believe that, right, in your core? And so do you also believe that if you believe in abolition, you could work towards it? or do you think there's just a hard stop?
In my personal perspective, I think the reform achieves the abolition. I think the way in which we do something I call a just transition, a space where we really address the systemic and structural barriers. We're talking about defunding police, but what about the communities who need investment and that spans across healthcare and housing and all these issues? So just kind of making those links in a way that provides agency and real solutions to people who are impacted is important to me. So reform, I think the conversation could be expanded to be more meaningful in the ways that really address the structural barriers that are all interconnected to public safety. But yeah, reform, abolition, the steps, two steps.
I appreciate
level 1,
you.
level
Thank
2.
you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you were perfect to answer that question. Thank you. Has everyone answered this question, or did I get everyone? Devin is next. Did I get Devin?
I can give you a quick one. I really resonate with a lot of the answers that have already been given. But I think one thing that came to mind is that sense of community that I was talking about earlier, and how it kind of proves to me, at least, and to a lot of the people that I've been speaking to, about how we can take care of ourselves, how we can reimagine community involvement in all of this. And so I think that the most important thing is to divest, reinvest, and protect. And regardless of if you're for abolition or reformation, I think that there's a way for us all to meet in the middle and kind of join each other and just move towards more accountability, giving more power to the community oversight ballot. I think giving that actual power to hold people accountable is a great step in the right direction, and that by preventing that from happening because it doesn't meet your ultimate goal, I think it just puts a halt to progress that immediately damages people that are in that circumstance. So I think the best thing that we can do is try to hold people accountable right now, because there are people that are hurting right now. If you're not hurting right now, then your ideological standpoint is another privilege that everybody doesn't get to have. And so for me, every incremental step towards accountability and towards reimagining what safety looks like, to me, I'm all for it.
And Devin, so let me push you a little bit. So how do we expand that table to make sure that we're gathering all the input?
I think it's important to allow everybody's voice to be a part of this conversation, and to have these hard talks, whether or not somebody agrees with me.
Right.
Me, you, and Cameron Witten, and a few other very, very powerful intellectual Black people were all together on a panel very recently, and you and Cameron had disagreements, and I thought that was one of the most powerful points of that panel, is that us as Black people together, like he said earlier, are not a monolith, and we can work this out together. But people need to see us working it out together, us establishing power of our narrative and how we move forward. So that's what I'll say to that.
Thank you. Yeah, anybody that knows Cameron and I know we argue all the time. He's just like my little brother, who I have to correct. And so on to the next question. What are some misperceptions you think exist in the community and older generations about this movement? And what do you want people watching to know? Devin, you look like you're ready to pop in on this one.
I'll just say that one of the biggest misconceptions that I've noticed as far as this generation's protest and what's going on is that Black people aren't making sensible, peaceful decisions. And I think that one thing that I really want to reestablish is the power of the Black narrative and giving Black people back the ownership of this narrative, because so often, like Lamar said earlier, you get the co-opting of the white populace that is meant to stand us up and stabilize us and support us, not to create a narrative that supports something that probably resembles resembles white fragility. We need more Black people at the helm of this, and making sure that it's clearly understood that we are here to peacefully protest the injustices that have befallen our people. And so moving forward, I just need everybody to understand that there is a difference between anarchists and Black liberation. Like, we are about peaceful protest, nonviolent resistance, and that's the main thing I need people to understand. We are not here to incite fear and chaos in the city. We just want our voices to be heard, and we just want people that are supposed to protect us to stop killing us.
Amen.
I second that. I second that, Devin. I second that. Couldn't have been said any better.
You want to add anything, Sophie?
No, it could have not been said any better. I think that in itself really summarizes what I wanted to share. So yeah.
All right. Let's see, Lamar.
Yeah. I think related to that, the way that the media has portrayed the protests, the violence that has continued to come up, and then also, this idea that we aren't ready to lead. Quite frankly, we just, give us the reins and we'll show you, right? Like, we'll show you what we can do. With, frankly, we've had to work our magic with less resources. We've had to work our magic with less institutional support, and we've been able to grow from that and actually see the system in a way that a lot of folks haven't been able to, right? Because they just haven't had our experience. But at the same time, I think that we are the right people to be leading this, because we've seen the ugly parts of the system.
Mm-hmm.
We know exactly in which cases where things get shifted from out under us, and where we've lacked, I think, really the basic respect as humans to be able to thrive in this society. And so I guess that's what I would say, in the misconception that we aren't ready for this, because we really are.
Well, let me just remind the millenniums that young people have always been at the lead of every social justice movement in this country. Always. I mean, even in the civil rights movement, middle school kids went to jail every day and spent the night in jail and got out and went back to school the next morning. So anybody who says this is unique to have young people leading a movement just don't know their history. Shanice.
Yes. So I resonate so much with what's been said. What I see now and know now, young people are ready to step up and do whatever it is possible. And I truly believe we will win. I think that the organizing that's been happening, that's been Black led, from Black young voices, has been incredibly inspiring. And at the same time, we are in the Northwest. A lot of white folks are here. And having co-conspirators in this movement is a strength. It's a tool. And so I think that, especially as a Black woman, I feel a sense of safety when white folks put their bodies on the line when I'm out there.
Yes.
And so I think that there's definitely a lot of narratives around what's going down. But I definitely think Black folks, we are not a monolith, and that there is beautiful movement and progress at the same time that's messy, that is really taking place at the forefront of the movement. And I think that white folks have the privilege of showing up differently, having disagreements maybe, and it's not really a spectacle. But I think that there needs to be some more space for the lived experiences of Black people to be acknowledged as unique and beautiful, and that our experiences with racism are both interconnected but different. So there is space for that, and there's space for our co-conspirators.
I love the co-conspirators and accomplices as terminologies for active support. So thank you so much for that. Cameron, have you spoken to this?
No.
Please.
Misperceptions. 1, we are not distracted. And 2, we have valid demands. You don't go 100 days of sustained action distracted. We've seen in 100 days the removal of armed police officers in schools. We've seen the defunding of police expenditures that do not serve our community. We are now poised to pass a historic police accountability reform. And to have the boldness of a vision for real transformation in exemption of piecemeal, because that's what I think people are comfortable with. They're comfortable with that piecemeal reform. You cannot discount our demands just because they are not the piecemeal that you're used to. The Pew Research Center just released a poll. Black Lives Matter was at an all-time high of public approval in June, and now, 100 days later, it has slid 12 points.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter is not a fad. It is not a trend. We are here. We are not distracted. We have demands, and it's time to make that difference.
Excellent. It's absolutely true. I did notice that as well, that there seems to be this downward trend. And that's challenging. Candace, you want to weigh in on this one, please?
Yeah, I think the main
up in my corners. So I'm so sorry. I said you're up in my corner, so I think I keep missing you. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. I think the thing that I want to just say, I agree with what everyone said. The only thing I would add is the way movements are built are changed in the digital age. I think that's something that is a big thing that generations older than us are having to grapple with. Some of the biggest movements, like the Me Too movement, like the Black Lives Matter movement, started on these hashtags. Right. I mean, and so I feel like for me, what I want people to hear is that this isn't the 60s anymore. We're not going to do things the same. I keep getting people like white and Black people that are like, oh, well, we need an MLK. And I'm like, you know what? We're all MLK. We're all little MLKs here. It's not going to be that same way, because the way that our movements grow, they're more leaderless. And the way that we connect our advocacy online has drastically changed how we move through this world. So I just want people to understand that, and, just like be comfortable with the fact that the way we see the world, the way we interact with the world is different. Our needs are different. I'm about to turn 32 next week. How many recessions do I have to go through in my damn young life? You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of things that are impacting us beyond just this policing issue. And there's a frustration that has been built. And I want people to acknowledge and appreciate how we advocate for ourselves in the digital age.
Yes. Oh, very beautifully stated. So I'm going to push back a little on you, Candace, as I'm one of those elders you were talking about, right? And we do the best we can. We know Facebook now, so, and I know you guys have moved on, but seriously, how do we really appreciate the legacy of our elders who've been in this fight for generations, and not discount the elders, but at the same time, really be open to new creative ideas because of technology, because of our artists, because of our musicians? How do we create that space that isn't, you're old, so you don't know what's going on, or you're young and, you don't have the experience yet? Where's that middle ground where we can all come and say, okay, here's my contribution to the movement. This is what I bring.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, people like Cameron, Shanice, and I, who worked to start the Black Millennial Movement, have talked a lot about. And it's a big reason we started it, because we felt like we wanted to make room for these new voices and make room for our approach, but also building our political Black power. And I think for us, politics is a very white space. And it's everything when we look at politics, we check it against like a white narrative all the time. It's like default. And I want us to unite in our generations of experience and show, like, having our people that were in that civil rights movement and can share really important lessons for us. I want to be in community with those people. So I think for me, it's about, especially in a place like City that has such a small Black community, and I don't want to see us feuding over things like, oh, well, we did it this way, or we want to do it this way. I want to see us come together. And I think we need to work on building our community and our political power. And I think that will come naturally once we do that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I see us moving through this. And I really just want our elders to nurture our leadership. And this is a really great example of that. I think you're doing that by hosting this conversation. So just give us a chance. We're MLKs in the making, and we want to be heard.
Well, let me just say that, you guys got to fix this mess we're leaving you. So, I have absolute confidence that you are the people to do it. And I want to share a quick story. I remember when I got so excited when Rose City Justice was organizing, and I was like, I have to speak at that event. I didn't do what the typical elder would do, which is to go, you know who I am. I want to come down and speak to your group. I called one of the organizers and said, I'm so and so, and if you will have me, I would really be honored to speak with your group. And kind of left a message, didn't know if anybody would call me back. And almost by the time I hit send, a young woman called me back, and she was just so gracious. And I have to say, I've been to thousands of protests in Portland in my 30 plus years here. And I've never been to one more organized and more concise and very specific, and with all the pieces in place. It's like, get down here, we got you, and nothing's going to happen to you. And that was a fabulous experience. So I think maybe all of us could have a little bit of humbleness, right? Because I think we all learned something from everybody, right, at some point. But that was one of my best experiences. I tell you, that's in my top 5. People say, yeah, what's the top 5? That's in my top 5. Okay, so we're going to move on. There were a couple people who have mentioned um, that though police is a huge issue, and people are paying a lot of attention to it, there are also a lot of other issues in the city of Portland that are impacting the lives of Black people. And so wanted to know if you want to answer the question, like, so what are the other big issues that you care passionately about other than policing and that ilk? I'm going to start with Shanice.
Yeah, I would love to answer this question. I think this movement is calling for police abolition, but for me personally, it's also about a space where Black kids, Black people can live and eat and play and work and grow and make mistakes in the city. And so I'm getting some feedback. But I think in terms of specifics, the city of Portland has the opportunity to make policies and ordinances that can make it possible to rebuild the Black hubs and center places that were destroyed from gentrification, and what it would mean to build spaces where I actually could feel safe without it being an organized space that I experienced for a moment in time, or what it might mean for policies that could hold health systems accountable to the harm or neglect that Black folks who seek medical attention experience, of Black girls and women, or thinking about youth and our youth violence prevention even that lens to expand beyond policing and provide kids opportunities to make meaning of their experiences, heal from their trauma, advocate for themselves when they're in scenarios where they're struggling. And so those are the things that I would really love to see, real steps, meaningful steps in all these areas that also make me feel unsafe, make other folks feel disconnected from each other. And housing, healthcare, and just really investing more in young people.
Excellent. Thank you. Lamar.
Actually, I feel like Shanice
Covered it.
I mean, honestly, right? Like, yeah, I was thinking about the things I would say. Like education, housing, gentrification, mental health. Like, I feel like those are like the big things, right? Like the in June, we part of where we marched was gentrified gentrified areas of Portland, because just as police have brought violence upon our communities, guess what? So have the banks. So have white folks that have basically bought up whole blocks of Black neighborhoods. And then our youth, even though we had this announcement that SROs in Portland are will be removed, that doesn't mean that they won't be back, right? Like I kind of think that they were just removed because of budgetary reasons. Like let's be real. We're gonna need to continue to ensure that the school to prison pipeline is actually destroyed. And then in terms of mental health, we're going through some things. Like I think a lot of us are going through some things. I'm going through some things. Maybe I should just speak for myself, right? Like there are a lack of resources right now for us to ensure that we are in a place where we can make good decisions, where we can be happy, and where we feel like we can move in the ways that we need to move to feel good about life. So I think a lot more resources need to be put into ensuring that we're good, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and let me just echo that. I think all of us are, and I will speak for myself and a lot of people, we've just been traumatized over and over and over and over again. And that's just with the stuff that happened this year. We're not even talking about the stuff that happened prior to this year. And so, Candace.
I'm going to double down on housing advocacy. I really think that that's an important part of addressing policing, because again, policing were started with wanting to recapture slaves, AKA people's property. We were people's property, as a reminder. And then it evolved into protecting property from Black people, protecting white people from Black people. And so I think it's really important that we really invest in making mixed neighborhoods, mixed income neighborhoods. Super excited that City Council recently passed the residential infill project. I went and testified in behalf of that and I testified, it was happening in the middle of all the George Floyd protests. And I was like, I'm here because what we're protesting out there is directly related to this policy. So I really want us to create neighborhoods that break those barriers of us versus them. And also because we, exactly like Shanice was saying, we deserve to have work and play and fun and resources in our communities. And our communities not only have been gentrified, but they've been starved of resources. So I really want to see us invest in how we give more availability of housing for Black people and Black families.
Cameron.
As we all, as beautiful Black people, know, is that our racist system of policing is just the tiniest piece of a large white supremacist iceberg. Mm-hmm. The Bill of Rights was written in a room built by enslaved Black children. And so we all have work that we must do to abolish the white supremacists in our minds. Portland really can evolve past our disappointing history. And we need to do that by one, a transfer of power. We are done with the oligarchs. And by oligarchs, I mean the wealthy elite and mega corporations. We need government and democracy for and by the people. We also need, 2, transfer of capital. And I don't mean job programs. I don't mean scholarships. We need reparations. We need universal health care, universal basic income, and we need living wages for all people. We will only have reconciliation and healing for our communities when we start looking boldly on the justice that has been deferred for centuries now. We've got to do that work.
Excellent. Thank you, Cameron. Sophie,
Yeah.
the question that's on the table now.
I will answer the one that was posed that everyone has answered. I think that I just want to highlight mental health, just ensuring that we receive trauma-informed care, similar to our white counterparts who may receive it as a default. So I just want mental health to be highlighted. And to acknowledge that we can have the stats that show, okay, US is 13% Black or so, and about 16% of Black people in that 13% identify as those who have experienced some kind of mental health challenge. So for the city of Portland, I'd like to see resources allocated towards culturally specific mental health programs and less gatekeeping in organizations which have a big say in the way that our communities are flourishing. So yeah, that's what I'd like to mention.
Sophie, it sounds like you just opened a can of worms. We could talk for probably a couple of hours on that particular topic, but we're going to hold that one for another day.
I try to keep it as short as possible.
No, you were great, but it just got my mind all kind of percolating. Did everyone get to answer this question? Yes? All right, so my next question is, what is the role of white people and the Black Lives Matters movement in Portland specifically? And Candace, I'm going to start with you since I've been very lax in actually getting you engaged early.
I think there's 3 very specific ways. I think you need to stand in front of us and protect us from these systems, protect us from police brutality. I think you need to stand beside us and walk with us when we come out and we go to the streets to protest and to talk about what our needs are. You need to be there with us. And then you need to stand behind us and let us lead. This is not a moment to use this opportunity to lift up your own voice. It's about lifting up our voices. So in front, beside, and behind. Those are my 3 tips.
Hear, hear. Cameron.
Which Cameron?
Cameron always has jokes. You, Cameron. The Cameron is talking.
Gotta dab at my big sis.
I know, right? It is what it is, yes.
White people. And so one thing that I'll recognize, especially living in Portland, Oregon, the whitest major city in the United States, there are difficult and important conversations happening about what is the right way for a white person, ally, accomplice, co-conspirator. We have so many names now. What is the right way to show up in this work? Yes. What I will say is that being a part of the solution to racial justice is not a sacrifice. It is not a detriment. White folks, you have a baton of privilege that you did not earn. That was earned because of stolen land in a country built by stolen people. And so you have a baton of privilege that you can pass forward. And you hand that baton to Black, brown, and indigenous people and watch how far they can run. Because what's happening in our country is we are suffering because of a denial of deserved opportunity. Give folks the basics that they need: a real education, real living wage, life with dignity, be able to walk out your house knowing that you'll get back home at the end of the night safe and alive. That is all we are asking for. Give us those things with your baton of privilege and just watch how far we go.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Sophie.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to provide like a real life example, if you guys don't mind. For
Please.
me, what it looks like essentially to be an ally is to understand that you may not have all the answers, you may not have all, you may not know how to solve the challenge, you may see something that you know is unjust and not have an answer to it, but acknowledging it is literally the start to where it all begins. So like in our office, I'm at Street Roots, the newspaper organization, and we are selling the newspaper and we are providing resources to people. And I've experienced a racially motivated incident with someone who came into our office, and upon discussing that with my manager at the time, who's also Black, Devon Pouncey, our director wanted to chime in and listen, just take a moment to listen to what we experienced and just be there, be present. And it could have just been a incident in which I go home and I feel so sorrowful because I experienced this from someone and I didn't know how to respond, and I didn't feel like I was cared about or anything. And to be told that someone who's above me wants to listen and just be present to see what kinds of solutions we can have really impacted the way that things were going forward. And we were able to create this equity plan and have it be very realistic, based on honest conversations that we've had in the office. This was one of many that we've had. And I think that conversations with our white counterparts is what it looks like, basically, to show up for Black and people of color, Black people and people of color. Yeah.
Here, here. Thank you for that, Devin.
Yes, so sorry if the signal might be a little weak. We're now caravanning across the city. But for me, honestly, what true white allyship looks like is a supporting role. It looks like you taking the time to educate yourself and work tirelessly against the forces in this world that will attempt to blind you of your white privilege. That work in and of itself right there, to me, it shows that you are here for the right reasons. Like integrity is what you do when nobody's looking. Going to your home, educating yourself, and reminding yourself every day that you must be anti-racist every day and work diligently at it, because it's not a fixed arrival. It's not something where you do one act and you get a badge. Oh, I'm not racist. It is work. It is relentless work. For you to not put that educational baggage on Black men and women to constantly prove to you why racism exists and to give you the ammunition that you need. That is work that I as a Black man have had to engage in most of my life when I'm trying to understand my own self. So I need you, I need white people to put in a similar amount of effort to understand the world that they have never really been privy to, that they've really never been exposed to. I need them to expose themselves to that world and to understand more deeply and to internalize the messages that we espouse, right? And so moving forward, I just want white people and all of these capacities just to educate yourself and to truly internalize the meaning of this movement, not to do it to absolve you of any guilt, because white guilt doesn't help propel this forward by an inch. What does help is you educating yourself and you standing by us and supporting us as we try to better our own circumstances.
Excellent. Shanice, you're next.
Yeah, I really, again, concur with folks and Candace's 3 tips. Also, really, I was using this language, co-conspirator. I really feel white folks using their power and privilege in a way that distributes it back to Black folks is incredibly useful. White people talk to your kids and your family about racism about Black people, about this country. I could not stress that anymore. I think that the status quo, there's a painful part of it continuing, and those moments in your own communities, where you live, where you work, doing the work there is the most important part. And at the same time, there's this sense of urgency that to fix and solve racism that I feel comes from a place of whiteness, white supremacy. And so there is an urgency to address this issue that is killing Black people. And at the same time, Black folks have been in this movement for more than a moment. And so there is a necessity to listen to Black people and Black voices, and practice that self-work in a way that uses your listening ear. But that's all I'll say.
Wow, I gotta tell you, I could do this for the rest of the afternoon, but I know you young folks have lives, so let me, Lamar, have you answered this question?
I haven't, but I honestly don't have anything more to add. Like, I think these beautiful Black minds have said it all.
I gotta tell you, bro, this has been a very, very, very powerful conversation. And I thank all of you both for being your brilliant selves, but also being very honest and straightforward about what it takes to build power, what it takes to actually engage at the grassroots level and the policy level, and staying true to who you are. And your vision for what's possible. I am very excited about what's next. This is going to be our final question, and I'm going to ask each of you, who are your role models in this moment, and what individuals and or organizations that aren't represented here today would you encourage people to connect to? Anybody want to jump in and start?
I would say that I would say right now in this moment, my role models are the people standing left and right of me, the people that are in this fight with me, that are continuing to put their bodies, their minds, their spirits, their sanity on the line for this movement, and to understand the severity of it. Organizations like, I would say, Juice, led by Dre, who has put on this very caravan that I'm a part of right now, that is kind of given us a way for us to peacefully stand and say, we won't take this. People like this that propel us forward in a peaceful, sensible way, that represent what this movement really is about. I love people like this, and the guys that I'm here left and right of, because it proves that it's about representation, about visibility. If you were raised in a house and all you saw in your house were pictures of your brother and no pictures of yourself, how would you value yourself? How now is essentially us putting pictures of ourselves on that wall and representing ourselves and understanding our power and setting that standard, that precedence, moving forward with other youngsters that are out here right now seeing this world that they're going to grow up in.
Thank you very much. So let's see, Shanice, next.
Yes. So I like to read. There are folks like Barbara Smith and Audre Lorde who I think about, Black feminists, who have really informed the way I make meaning of this movement. And on a local level, I'm really inspired by both elders and young people, Black elders and young people in this community. Folks like yourself, Commissioner Hardesty, and Avell Gordley, I think have made a meaningful impact on my organizing. And youth out here, Fridays for Freedom and the Black Youth Movement, I think there are a number of folks who are continuously making demands and building coalition with other folks. And so I'm really inspired by that, and also learning the lessons of historic Black Portland, and all of the work that really impacts our present day struggle.
Thank you very much. Cameron.
organization first. Beyond Black. There's this widely distributed myth that Black Portland was lost when gentrification eviscerated North and Northeast Portland. And the folks at Beyond Black have been resilient and have continued the work in East County, where many Black Portlanders have been displaced to, knowing that they deserve community no matter where they live. And so please find them. Role models. I'm looking at the people here in this very Zoom room. You all are role models to me in such powerful ways. Shanice, Candace, BMM, you both, just like me, you have braved the ballot. And even though white Portlanders were not ready for our beautiful Blackness just yet, you are still here making amazing shockwaves. Devin, I swear to God, I feel like when I see you, I'm looking in the mirror. 10 years ago, my life was changed by social movements, and I see it happening again through your movements. It's so incredible. Sophie, I don't know you that well. We've got to change that. So please reach out. Lamar, you're probably the one I've known the longest, except for Commissioner Hardesty. And I remember back when you were the Cameron Witten who worked at OSA. And now here you are. You're at tables, you're in rooms in ways that truly are astounding. And I'm so impressed and so inspired. And then of course, Commissioner Hardesty, you are an affirmation for me because you've had to face struggle. Even when you first ran for office 2 years ago to become an upset, running against an incumbent. And then even after you were elected, we've seen time and time again as elected leaders calling out our Mayor Wheeler, undermine your leadership. And you have fought for years still. And now to see in this window, when the time was right, you were there ready to take action. And so you've shown time and time again with affirmation that persistence is key. And so you all are role models for me in incredible ways. And I'm so happy to be in the Zoom room with you.
You guys are making me cry. I'm feeling the love. Candace.
Yes, I agree that all of you in this room are role models to me. I'm super inspired and thankful to be in community with people like all of you. And I think also look to Portland State. There are so many young up and coming students that I get to work with. And I have seen them go into the community and do great things. And so keep an eye on PSU. There's a lot of students making moves there. There are a couple of voices nationally that I really love following, like Brittany Packnett Cunningham, Bree Newsome Bass, Alicia Garza. Alicia was one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And then, of course, I've got the Beyonce and Michelle Obama. They're always up there. People I look up to. I just got to throw them in there. Let's add Megan Thee Stallion in there too. She's a queen. So I am just all about Black women, and I am really inspired by that. And yeah, I just really am looking forward to seeing what we grow here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I can go next.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so for me, I want to highlight two folks that are like, I'm just now learning about recently, are Tamani, sorry if I butcher your name, but Tamani Emerald Reed, and she's creating essentially a educational format for children to learn about Black Lives Matter and to learn about this movement in a way that makes sense to them. And so I really appreciate her work. And Dr. Anita Randolph, if you guys have read Willamette Weekly, she created an organization called Safer Space, which hopes to connect Black therapists to Black folks in the community. And just there's so many others that I really applaud that are doing a lot of the legwork, especially during this time where we have a pandemic, we had wildfires, we have so many issues. And despite that, they are working so hard, oftentimes around the clock, to get resources to people and to ensure that we are, as a people, continue to thrive. So I really appreciate those folks who are just killing it. So, yeah.
Here. Lamar, I think you have not spoken yet.
You are
Or
correct.
did you decide that you weren't going to? Is that what I remembered?
Oh, that was for the other one.
Okay, all right. I'm old, it's hard to keep all that stuff in my head. Please go ahead.
You're good. You're good. Yeah, I'll start with the organizations first. So, the Portland African American Leadership Forum. I think they actually might be changing their name to Imagine Black, but I've really been taking their lead in terms of like demands and so that's an organization that I would love to uplift. In terms of who I look up to, quite frankly, all the Black women, Black femmes, Black trans folks that have been holding it down and really have sacrificed a lot in this movement. I just wanted to take a moment to uplift those folks because, yeah, like it's been hard, and I think especially this week it's been super hard. So I just know that I'm holding you all close to my heart, and that I feel like those are the leaders that we should continue to center.
Thank you very much. Did I get everybody this go round? I'm seeing no one that was left out. I just want to thank each and every one of you. Each and every one of you are superstars in your own right. And I am so grateful that you spent a couple of hours with us today so that we could get to know you all a little better. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you're doing in our community. You're truly setting a model for how people don't have to wait for permission or position or title to be engaged in our community and to have their voice heard and to fundamentally change public policy. Do not forget that the reason we've had the success we've had is because you took to the street and you made your voices heard and you continue to do that. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Let me also tell you what's coming up because, as you know, unless we make policy changes, we can keep taking to the street, but we've got to fundamentally change our systems. And so, a project we've just launched from my office is called Rethink Portland. And we have a website called rethinkportland.com, right? Very creative. But what it does is give all of us an opportunity to really engage in the deeper conversation about what does community safety really look like and for who. What does safety look like in Black communities? What does safety look like in communities experiencing mental health trauma? What does community safety look like? And we all have to be part of that, and we all have to be involved in helping me and my colleagues make good choices when it comes to the fall bump, where we get another opportunity to look at where we invest our resources. I continue to say I follow the money and we put our money where our mouth is. And so if we're not investing in things that uplift community, it is your obligation to demand that we do better. And so Rethink Portland is an opportunity to get all of us engaged. Please check out the website. Come when you can. And in fact, next Tuesday, we will be having a conversation very focused. The city will have a budget meeting, very focused on the police budget. And it will be led by the Portland Community Engaged Policing Committee. And so please go to my commissioner Facebook page, sign up, and keep doing what you're doing because you are a model, right? You just never know what 5, 6, 7 year olds looking at you today going, "Ooh, I want to do that," right? I want to do that. I want to make change happen. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and stay safe out there. Knowing that we are in these times, we are safer together. So take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Black
you.
Lives Matter.
Thank you.
Yes, Black Lives Matter. Bye bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye bye.